So you're planning a wedding. It should be one of the most exciting times of your life, right? But let's be totally honest, it can also get, well, pretty stressful. With about a million decisions to make, it is so easy to get lost in all the little details. That's exactly why we're here, to help you sidestep the most common mistakes.
It's a question pretty much every couple asks themselves at some point. Is this a dream come true, or is it turning into a logistical disaster? Planning a wedding can feel like you're juggling a dozen different jobs at once. But what if you had a roadmap, a guide to help you navigate the biggest pitfalls? Well, that's what we're going to cover, so you can plan a day that's memorable for all the right reasons. Okay, let's dive in.
All right, so we're going to break this down into the 4 areas where things tend to go sideways. First, the money. We'll talk budget blunders and all those hidden fees. Then, the people. Everything from guest lists to family pressure. After that, your vendor team and how to spot the real pros. And finally, the day itself, making sure you can actually enjoy it without a single regret.
Let's kick things off with the absolute foundation of your entire wedding, the budget. This is hands down the #1 source of stress for most couples, but I promise you, getting it right from the very beginning will save you so many headaches down the line.
It sounds so obvious, I know, but you would not believe how many couples book a venue or a photographer before they've even had a real conversation about the numbers. The key is to sit down with your partner and any family members who might be contributing and agree on a total figure before you spend a single dollar. That number becomes your North Star for every decision you make. Right, because even with a really solid budget, hidden fees can pop up and totally derail your plans. These are the costs that aren't always advertised up front, but they can easily add up to thousands of dollars. So let's shine a bright light on the biggest culprits. First up is the service charge. This is a mandatory fee, usually somewhere between 15 and 25%, that venues and caterers add to your food and beverage bill. Now, what's crucial to know is that this is not a tip for the staff. Nope, it covers the venue's operational costs. If you haven't budgeted for it, that's a huge, unexpected hit to your wallet. And it doesn't stop there. On top of the service charge, you've also got sales tax. Now, depending on where you are, this can be anywhere from 5 to 8%. A really smart move is to add this percentage as a buffer to every single line item in your budget, not just the big ones. That way, you won't get caught off guard when those final bills start rolling in. And finally, probably the most important tip I can give you, build an emergency fund. Unforeseen things always happen. A price goes up, you need an extra hour from the photographer, whatever it is. Setting aside at least 5% of your total budget as a contingency buffer gives you peace of mind and prevents a little surprise from becoming a major financial crisis. And believe me, the list goes on. Don't forget about things like vendor overtime fees if your party runs late, alterations for your dress or suit which can cost hundreds, postage for all your invites and thank you cards, tips for your amazing vendor team, and even the fee for your marriage license. You've got to track these small costs because they add up incredibly fast. Okay, so once you have a handle on the money, we can move to the even trickier part, the people. Managing your guest list and family expectations can feel like walking through an emotional minefield, but there's a clear strategy to navigate it. Oh, this is a big one. It is so easy to fall into the trap of inviting people out of obligation. Your parents' business partners, that distant cousin you haven't seen in 10 years. But just look at the contrast here. Every single person you invite out of guilt takes up a seat and a big slice of your budget that could go to someone who is genuinely a part of your life and your future. The goal is to be surrounded by your true supporters, the people who champion your relationship. I absolutely love this quote from planner Elizabeth Hall because it just cuts through all the noise. If you're struggling with the guest list, just stop and ask yourselves this question. It reframes the whole thing from who should we invite to who are the people we simply can't imagine celebrating without. That little shift in perspective makes those tough cuts so much easier. Now, let's talk about a tricky situation: family contributions. If your parents are helping to pay for the wedding, it's pretty likely they'll expect some say in the guest list. The key here is to have this conversation early. Before anyone even makes a list, agree on a set number of guests they can invite. Setting that boundary right up front prevents so many misunderstandings later on. So, you've got your budget, you've got your guest list. Now you need a team to actually bring your vision to life. Hiring vendors can feel like a full-time job, but knowing what to look for and, more importantly, what to avoid is your secret weapon. Okay, This slide is basically your red flag checklist. If a price seems way too good to be true, it probably is. If a vendor takes weeks to answer an email now, just imagine what it'll be like after you've paid them. Vague contracts, high-pressure sales tactics, no insurance, these are all major warning signs. You have to trust your gut. If something feels off, just walk away.
Now, here's a term you absolutely need to know: a contingency plan. This is what separates the real pros from the amateurs. What happens if your photographer gets sick? What if the DJ's equipment totally fails? A true professional will have a clear, documented backup plan. Asking about this isn't being rude. It's a completely necessary step to protect your day.
At the end of the day, your contract is your single most important tool. It's your best protection. If a vendor promised you something over the phone, like an extra hour of coverage or a specific type of flower, you have to make sure it's written down in that contract. Read every single word of the fine print before you sign anything. It is the only way to guarantee you get exactly what you paid for.
And that brings us to our final section. You've done all the hard work: the budgeting, the guest list, hiring the vendors. Now, let's talk about how to avoid the most common regrets so you can actually be present and soak in every single moment of the day you planned so carefully.
I hear this from couples all the time. After months, sometimes years of planning, the day itself just goes by in a flash. You feel like you're just being shuffled from one thing to the next, and before you know it, it's over. But you know what? It doesn't have to be that way. There are real, concrete steps you can take to slow down time and actually experience your wedding.
Okay, here's your game plan for an unrushed day. First, build buffer time into your timeline. Hair and makeup will run late. It just happens. Add 15 to 20 minutes of cushion between each event. Second, think about doing a first look. Seeing each other before the ceremony lets you get most of your photos done early, which means you can actually go to your own cocktail hour. Third, delegate. On the day of, your only job is to get married. Let your planner, your vendors, and your wedding party handle the rest. And finally, detach. Once the day starts, just let go of the perfect timeline in your head and be present.
And here are just a few final little pitfalls to sidestep. Always, always do a hair and makeup trial. The morning of your wedding is not the time for surprises. Seriously, make a plan to eat and drink water. You're gonna need the energy. Go easy on the alcohol so you can actually remember the night. And please, do not leave any major DIY projects for the day of. Your time is just too precious for that.
And this is the perspective you need to keep for the big picture. When you find yourself totally stressing about the color of the napkins, just take a deep breath and remember this. The wedding is a party. It's a wonderful, amazing party, but it's the marriage that truly matters. And that's really the ultimate takeaway, isn't it? All this planning, all this effort, it's all to launch the beginning of your life together. So as you navigate all the little details, just keep your focus on that bigger goal. Plan a beautiful day, for sure, but more importantly, build a beautiful life.